What's up guys, Goliath here, actually commentating over my first video. Kinda weird. Anyway, real quick, the RSR build used in this video will be in the description. This is the most popular track in the game, and I have put an extensive amount of detail into this whole breakdown, so I imagine many of you will find this video very useful. So first off, I'm going to let the raw footage of this run go on first, and then once that's done, we'll roll over into the breakdown. So if you guys enjoy this and find something in here useful, let me know in the comments, and I'll see you guys in the breakdown. So right off the bat, you should already be holding down your nitrous button. If you look up at the controller overlay at the top, you'll see that I'm already holding it down. When you do this, the game will go ahead and use your nitrous for you once the race actually starts. I've gone over this in a past video, but I still see people to this day not doing this. This is a very easy time to gain. I think some people will wait a little longer because they're worried about running into the AI. In situations where I think is a black Porsche to the left of me at the start, I always kind of just gently move my car to the left, and as I get close to the AI will also kind of just move to the left as well. In this case though, I got this purple Mustang that does not move to the left, but in those cases you can just run up the middle. But that's just a little tidbit. You always want to make sure you hold down the nitrous button at the start. You don't want to lose this easy time to gain. Make sure you shift up to at least 3rd gear or 4th gear at the start. The main point here is just to get as much traction as you can at the start so you can accelerate. Sticking to like 1st gear at the very beginning will cost you time because your wheels are just going to keep spinning. Obviously you need to be in manual transmission to make use of this, so if you are in automatic, well, this is just time that you're going to have to factor into losing. One last thing to note about your NOS usage at the start. don't use your NOS sporadically. So what I mean is some people, they kind of wait a little bit between using each bottle. So they'll use maybe one bottle, wait a second, then they'll use maybe another 2 bottles, wait a second, then they'll use another one. Don't do that. That's the easy way to lose time. However many bottles you plan on using, just hold down the NOS button and get them all out of the way. So I'm just using 4 bottles here instead of all 5. Now using 4 bottles has kind of just been the tradition, though I don't know if everyone has taken the time to understand why it's just 4 and not 5. So take a look at this. We've got a 4 bottle start versus a 5 bottle start. What you'll notice is that on the 5 bottle start, I do get a slight edge, but the moment we get through that corner and the 4 bottle start, I get to use that 5th bottle to get quickly back up to speed. The 5 bottle start immediately loses the advantage. And it ends up being decently far behind, a very noticeable distance for sure. Always make sure you understand why the alternative is slower. So for this first corner, the main thing here is you want to make sure you go wide enough to where you can kind of clear the corner through the apex. And you also want to make sure that you're using your nitrous as early as you possibly can. So nitrous, as we all think about it, is used to speed up your car. In this case, it's used to stop my car from slowing down as I progress through the corner. You'll want to time it to where you can get your nitrous in mid-corner, and then also have just a little bit as you exit the corner to help your car pick the speed back up again. Waiting until after the corner seems like the move, but you have to realize all of that time you spend going slower mid-corner is time that you are losing. And you don't get that time back when you press your nitrous after the corner. Now this is something that you don't necessarily have to do, but this does save a little bit of time. Unfortunately, I did not do this perfectly, but the goal here is to kind of aim for this tree. And if you aim for that tree without touching the grass like I did, then you can hold basically like almost top speed. And you'll shave off about 1/10 of a second or so. So if you're trying to shave off the most time possible, then go ahead and go this way. Otherwise, for most of you, you can just go around and be fine, honestly. But yeah, this option's always here for you. So this is the first spot where I personally check to see if I'm on a decent pace or not. The first section is fairly straightforward, so most of the time if you're doing this right, you should come across here around like 29:30, 29:40. Any slower than that and you did something pretty wrong with the RSR anyway. So there is a clipping spot right up ahead that is pretty much unavoidable. Actually, not pretty much, it is literally unavoidable. What I've always done is I start following the yellow median, so I kind of go wide into the yellow median, and then I gradually cut across to the left as I progress through the corner. That's kind of always worked for me. There are some rare occasions where you get thrown off the track no matter what you do, but this is kind of what I've always done. Alright, we are approaching the most technical section of the entire race, and the way you take this jump is what sets you up to get through this city section at a pretty good pace. So with tricky spots like this, we got this hill here, and we want to make sure we use the full track as we approach this left-hander that's after this hill, but we can't see the barriers. So when you have stuff like this, you need to find a reference point, something that you can consistently use to always get the same result. So in my case, again, I use the yellow median, the yellow stripes, and I always try to go at it at an angle. When I go at it at an angle, and if we move forward a little bit, we'll notice that if you look ahead, we're aiming directly pretty much to land just on the left of the barriers. And that's the perfect spot to prepare yourself and set yourself up for the following left-hander. And you do need to use the full track to take this next left-hander properly. Now that we've made a successful landing, the next step is you need to immediately start drifting and aim for the apex here. As you progress through the corner, you'll want to, and this is where manual transmission comes into play again, you'll want to try to hold 7th gear for as long as possible. I always kind of just feel it. I don't necessarily have a definitive time when you should go down the 6th gear or not. Just make sure you downshift before this next checkpoint flag. Now, depending on how you started this corner, in most cases, you're going to need to go ahead and tap the brakes to snap your car just a little bit so you can clear this next corner. So if you look up at the controller overlay, you can see me just going ahead and tapping the brakes now, just ever so slightly. You can get through this corner without tapping the brakes. However, that comes with you taking the corner at a faster speed, which is going to shove you wider as you finish the corner. So if you look in this clip, you can see me doing that here. And I do clear it, but I'm not necessarily set up properly for the next corner. But on the same note, if you're paying attention, you'll notice that I didn't quite use the full track after I landed from the jump. There was still a little bit of extra space there that could be used to kind of compensate for that mistake. So that might be a little bit of an extra optimization that I could probably go for personally at some time in the future. But for the most practical purposes, tapping the brake just a little bit just to make sure you get the correct angle and set yourself up for that next corner is usually the best thing to do. Just a quick note that you can reliably cut the inside of this flag. This flag, for whatever reason, is extremely lenient. So keep that in mind as you go through this corner. You can cut this pretty sharp. Not too sharp though. There is a point where it will slow you down. Now, you'll want to go ahead and snake the following section. So just a quick recap on snaking. All it is when you initiate a drift, and then from then on, you just use your thumbstick or your arrow keys if you're on keyboard to steer the car, and you don't have to initiate the drift ever again. Taking out that extra brake input lets you hold more speed, and it's a lot more convenient too. So just like with that very first corner in the race, you want to hit the nitrous button as early as possible here. So right now I see that I'm in the clear, so I'm going to go ahead and use the nitrous, and I'll be running pretty close to the barriers, but that is what you have to do to get the most out of these runs. And as you continue to use your nitrous here, just continue to hold the drift and snake around this final left-hander. Alright, so we're coming up on one of the trickiest parts of the race. And really the only reason this part is tricky is because there is a really bad clipping spot. So let's talk about that. There's two things that can go wrong here. So in this first clip, you can see me making my way through the corner, but there's a problem. My front right tire gets airborne and then I lose my steering. So you need to be careful not to cut too sharp to where your wheels lift off the ground, because that is always what makes you lose your steering. And then you get thrown into a terrible line. Now in the second clip, this is where the actual clipping can happen. So if you cut even sharper than what I did in this last clip, as you can see here, you seem okay until you're just about to make your way fully back onto the sidewalk and your back right tire clips under the ground and it hits whatever happens to be under there as if you hit a wall, and then you literally explode. So that is definitely a hazardous corner. So let's go over how I approach this in my run. Alright, so since the ideal line has been literally stolen by clipping, you want to make sure you go as wide as you possibly can on this corner. Kind of almost get on the sidewalk. As you approach this light post, go ahead and begin your drift. I slightly tap on the brakes after that to get a little bit more turn in, just to kind of guarantee that I can make my way through this corner. And as I'm going through the corner, you'll notice that I'm just on the edge of those red bricks, but I'm not so far over that my wheels are going to lift and I'm going to lose all of my steering. That's the ideal spot that you'd want to be for this corner. That's about as sharp as you can take it. Once you're done with this corner, you'll want to continue to snake through this section, so just focus on the steering. Once you reach the second corner, that's when you'll want to hit your nitrous. How well you can do this second corner is completely dependent upon how you did the first corner. So you should be gripping this corner and using your nitrous as soon as you possibly can, as always. Drifting this corner in the RSR is a tad bit slower. The reason being, as soon as you initiate your drift, you instantly lose a little bit of speed. Whereas when you grip it, you don't have that issue. And when you press your nitrous early, you just hold the speed until you can finally straighten your car out after the corner. This is where you should be using your first refill. If you use your refill any sooner than this, then you are too aggressive with your nitrous. If you use it any later than this, then you're being too conservative. Just something to keep in mind. So we've got yet another clipping spot here. What's going on here is that there is a small dip on the inside of this corner. If the right side of your car leans into it too much, then the hood of your car actually ends up running into the inclination as the car is supposed to rise back up, and then you end up losing your steering. And in some cases, you just clip all the way off into the water. So if you want to avoid this, you'll need to take this corner just a hair wider so your car doesn't lean into the dip as much, and then you'll be able to get through this corner without clipping. This is the second spot where I check to make sure I'm on pace. For a 224, you'd likely want to get here at around a mid 108, maybe like a 108.60, something like that. If you're just trying to get under like a 230, then you'd want to get here around maybe a mid 110, 111. It kind of depends on how good you are on the last section of the race. Alright, this is definitely the trickiest turn of the race alongside that chicane back in the city. First of all, there is yet another clipping spot on this patch of grass up here. This patch of grass would likely be the ideal line to take this shortcut the best way possible, but if you go across it, you're just going to end up like I do here, and you get straightened out, lose your steering, and your race is over. So what you'll have to do is approach this corner at an angle. As you approach the corner, you'll want to engine brake, so just downshift your car a couple times to force your car to slow down very quickly. As you pass the dirt, go ahead and start your drift. If you're waiting until you can see the corner before you start your drift, you're going to miss it. Shortly after that, as you approach or as you touch the sidewalk, that's when you'll want to tap the brakes and try to snap your car. As your car is making its way through this shortcut, once you're about halfway through, go ahead and hit your nitrous. But hold on, there's another clipping spot. This is a weird one. Honestly, all clipping spots are weird, but this one's especially weird because if your right tire hits this, you lose your steering like you can see here. If your left tire goes over this, then you seem to be okay. This is a tough one to avoid. The best advice I can give you is the advice I gave before. Use reference points to execute this corner the same way. That way, you can naturally just always avoid this. So once you find that sweet spot that works for you, try to remember how that feels, remember your reference point, and then you should be good. Here's a fun fact. You see these black and yellow flags here? These flags are on every daytime race all over the place. If you ever have to go through any barriers and you see one of these flags, drive through it. For whatever reason, driving through the barriers where these flags are present doesn't seem to slow your car down as much. In fact, if you hit it at the right angle, it won't slow down your car at all. Rare Bear is a great example of this. If you go to the beginning of the last straight on that race and you see those barriers and you run through the flag, I don't lose any speed there. Just keep that in mind as you do these daytime races. Another place where I check to make sure I'm on the right pace. You get a 24, you should be here around a mid 128. If you're just trying to get under like a 230, then you should be here around maybe a mid 131, maybe a little bit lower. Again, depends on how you do the rest of the race from here. Also, use whatever bottles you have left on this straight, but don't use your refill on this straight. Alright, so this part is a little bit tricky, but the key here is, one, you want to make sure you're using the full track, so be as far left as possible. You notice here I'm really close to the grass. And then you want to aim to kind of drive in between the two light posts at the crest of the hill. As you go over the crest, you'll get some air, and as soon as you land, you want to turn in as sharp as you can. So you want to end up as far to the right as possible, like right next to the grass on the right, and then use your nitrous immediately. If you land and you go a little bit too wide, what's going to happen is what you see here. You're going to land, your wheels are going to lift. Your wheels will always lift, but you're going to be too far to the left, and then you're going to make your way onto the dirt, and then that will be where your race ends, because that is yet another clipping spot. Now, assuming you didn't suffer a horrible tragedy of clipping at this point in the race, what you'll want to do is continue to snake this corner, pop your refill, and then use your first bottle. Now, the reason we're using 2 bottles on this part overall is because there's no point in waiting. At this point, the highway section is just long enough to where if we use our bottle now, we'll still have an extra one at the end. So I kind of messed up here just a little bit. I cut in a hair too soon and then ended up getting pushed a little wider than I would have liked for this corner. Here's a quick clip of how it's supposed to be done, so you can kind of take advantage of the fact that the corner is banked to the left, and then you can use that to force your car in a little bit quicker. Alright, so we are on the last leg of the race pretty much. If you think you can't lose time here, then you are sorely mistaken. A lot of people end up losing time here for reasons I've mentioned before. They wait too long to use their nitrous. So remember in the very beginning I mentioned that I was using nitrous on that first corner to stop my car from slowing down, not necessarily to speed up. It's the same principle here. Don't use your bottle here. The reason why you don't want to use it is because if you do, you won't have a bottle when you get to the top of the hill with that final left-hander. Just go easy on the steering here so you can keep up as much speed as possible. Again, nothing new here. Take advantage of the fact that the road is banked to the right to force your car in, use your nitrous early, and exercise some car control. Alright, so we are coming up on the final clipping spot of the race. The reason why you clip here is the same as all of the other clipping spots. There's a dip in the road, your car leans in, you hit the inclination, and then your race is over. I would recommend playing it safe here and don't cut the hard inside. Go a little bit around, and then you can finish the race. Alright, we're at the final 2 corners of the race. At this point, you should go ahead and just grip this corner. It's shallow enough to where you don't need to drift it. And as always, use your nitrous as soon as you can. And that concludes the deep dive into my Sonic run. If you guys enjoyed this, let me know in the comments, and I might just make more of these in the future. See you guys in the next video. Peace.